everyone. I'm Johanna Miller of the Vermont Natural Resources Council, and we are bringing you our climate dispatch. It's been a bit, but there's some big news. We wanted to welcome Jane Lazorchak, Director of the Global Warming Solutions Act, and I'm here with my colleagues Ben Edgerly Walsh of VPIRG and Lauren Hierl, Vermont Conservation Voters. And I'm sure you are well aware that last week, the Climate Council passed its first statutorily required climate action plan. This is an initial plan that lays out a comprehensive pathway forward to not only reduce climate pollution, but make our communities more resilient and adapt to the warming world. I had the privilege of serving on that Climate Council. It was a huge amount of work, and I just want to start first by thanking Jane for lifting an enormous endeavor. It was a tight timeline. There was an incredible amount of work, and there's a ton more work to do. I want to say a sincere thanks to my fellow council members and all of the subcommittee members and all of Vermonters who really engaged in this important process. It's not over. Frankly, the work is going to get even harder, and the work will be ongoing. But I wanted to turn it over to Jane and just have her hit the highlights of what's in the climate action plan, and to the degree that we know at this moment, because again, iterative process, like what do you anticipate for ongoing public engagement and process? Then we're going to hear from Ben a little bit about look forward on the legislative session, and Lauren will close it off on like what you all can do to continue to stay tuned in. But so many thanks to Jane and to you all. Jane, give us a sense of what's highlights of the plan.
Well, morning, everybody. Thanks so much for being here and inviting me in. And I just want to echo Johanna's amazing gratitude and thanks, because this really was an orchestrated event that was really a hands-on deck for more than 60 people who participated, not only in the council, but also in the subcommittees, as well as the almost more than 1,000, I should say, between the survey and the engagement events Vermonters we were able to reach out to and tap into for their expertise to help us put forward the plan. That is an initial climate action plan that we've stepped up. The timeline was ambitious. It was speaking to not only the what Vermont needs to do, but the how. And we really fully appreciate and understand that there's more work to do, but we're also at the same moment proud of what we were able to put forward. And I feel like we're not saying that enough right now. This really was an unbelievable undertaking, and we were able to stand up a plan that speaks to more than 230 tangible actions that Vermont can take to both reduce our emissions pollution, as well as put forward in place an adaptive and resilient future for Vermont communities, and both natural and living. We're really excited that buckets of work speak to, again, emissions reductions, how we invest in our natural and working lands through carbon sequestration and storage, how we stand up resilient and adaptive communities and infrastructure, as well as natural systems that support that and beyond. And then we also were able to look at cross-cutting solutions that help us maximize emissions reductions while also investing in resilience. Those are components of work that you worked on too, Joey, thinking about transportation and how we meet the short-term needs of our emissions reductions while also investing in strategies that get us to the long-term goal of the 2050 reduction, which really is about how we live on the landscape and not only about how we invest in these short-term actions such as EVs and infrastructure. It's really thinking about compact settlement and beyond. So we're really excited about the plan. Again, it is an iterative process. The council itself has an ambitious plate over the course of the next few weeks and months, thinking about its next steps. As I'm sure many of the people who are watching this are aware, and Joey, I'm sure, can speak to in greater detail than me, at the 11th hour, the long-term sort of stability of the TCI program was in question. That was our largest strategy, as thinking not only about how we would produce significant revenues to invest in other actions in the plan, but also stand up emissions reductions in the transportation sector, our largest emitter in Vermont. So the council and its cross-sector subcommittee, mitigation subcommittee, will be thinking really strategically about how we come up with a plan B and put forward more strategies and actions related to the transportation sector. We'll be standing up ambitious public engagement up in January. We'll put forward, we plan to do at the minimum 3 online engagement events statewide. But what we weren't able to do this fall in a way that we really wanted to was stand up and invest in partner engagement. So recognizing and appreciating organizations like VNRC, VPIRG all have active networks that we can tap into. It makes sense for us to be thinking about how we reach out and partner with organizations like yours, as well as networks that help us reach into the communities that we really want to speak to, marginalized Vermonters living on the fringe who are really impacted by the changes that are put forward with climate change in the future and these policies that we want to see initiated. So we'll be working even next week. We have a focus of our Just Transitions subcommittee to think thoughtfully about the kinds of organizations that we want to partner with and how we help stand that up with support. We have real support that we want to put behind that to invest in that. And we'll be fleshing out a really thoughtful public engagement plan and strategies for the coming months. Coupled with further technical analysis that we need to do, consider actions that we had to table at the last minute, not in appreciation of how important they were, but just because of the lack of detail that we were able to get to. So we'll be thinking about biomass and the kinds of strategies and actions we want to think about in that space. And we'll be thinking about how to bring further detail to the actions that we did put forward, especially in the resilience and adaptation space, where it felt like just the world was being considered, and we really want to further refine what that work looks like for Vermont so we can be strategic. And luckily, we have real dollars to put towards this work. So the council already met once to think about where we're going to strategically invest ARPA dollars and recommend to the governor and legislature our top priorities for that work. And we'll be putting forward that memo in a more finalized form by the end of December, and hopefully really partnering with both the governor and the legislature this session to realize strategic investments in the plan. So I look forward to hearing actually from Ben too, his take on what the legislature is going to take up this session around the climate action plan. But I certainly appreciate and have heard even this morning in an email from House Transportation Chair Diane Lanphier that she really feels like this is a roadmap for years to come for her House committee. And we're really going to be trying to partner with the legislature to educate them about what's in the climate action plan and hopefully serve as a handoff, because a lot of that work we need to partner with the legislature on to realize now. It really is important for them to consider these policies. So thanks so much for having me here this morning.
Thanks, Jane. That was a great overview. I know you've got more than a little practice overviewing what the council's been up to. I've heard variations on that presentation, a whole lot of different arenas. Although obviously it's a little bit different now that you actually have a plan that you've adopted, which is just incredible. Yeah, and I don't want to be too redundant, but just deep appreciation for all the work that you put in and so many other people have put in, like Joey and Jane were saying. This is just incredible to see in the past year, and especially over the last couple of months, the just volume of work that was put into to have a really good plan, as much as it needs to keep on getting built on. So thinking about the legislative session, Jane mentioned the idea that this is a plan that's going to be implemented for years to come. That's absolutely right, and obviously the council is going to be iterating and building on this plan repeatedly in the coming years and decades. So for this legislative session, we expect a lot actually of the specific policies and actions that are outlined in the plan that would require legislative action to show up in the legislature, to be introduced as bills, to be discussed in committees. And there's an open question actually on what of those things are going to be on the sort of 1 year track, as it were, that really would become full enacted laws this coming session. What is going to get a really good start, but then needs some more legwork before it actually is ready to make that leap, and might actually be something that is ultimately passed in, say, the 2023 legislative session. Excuse me. But a few things that I did want to highlight. One, As Jane mentioned, obviously the budget is an enormous piece of this. To actually get on track to hit our climate targets and do that in an equitable way, we're going to need to invest a really significant amount of state dollars. Obviously, the federal legislation that's moved, the infrastructure bill that's already passed, the Build Back Better bill that's being considered is really helpful on that front. But that doesn't mean that Vermont doesn't have a lot of work to do as well. And there are a lot of instances where, we can see, okay, the federal government sort of gets us this far, but then we need to actually get involved as a state to make sure that lower income Vermonters or other Vermonters who often have a harder time taking part in this transition can actually take advantage of those federal programs that are being created. So there's going to be a big conversation in the budget itself, and then also in the transportation bill, which is where actually a lot of the infrastructure dollars show up in the sort of transportation arena. So we're expecting what is being discussed as a Transportation Innovation Act, and basically an outline of what are the climate investments that are needed in the transportation space to actually hit our climate targets and do that in an equitable way. That's something that we expect the Transportation Committee in the House to be digging into. And I know this is something that Jane mentioned, but just to be very clear, we're really glad that Council is going to be taking some time to dig into the budget. What are the available funds on infrastructure that can be built towards climate pollution cuts, that can be built towards resilience? What about the state dollars that we have? There are just a whole host of needs, and having good work and good thinking from the Council as well, I think is going to be important going into the legislative session. A few other things I wanted to just touch on quickly. The clean heat standards, so the idea that these big fossil fuel companies that sell heating oil and propane into Vermont should actually have a responsibility to help Vermonters reduce their climate pollution in the heating space through helping them weatherize or install cold climate heat pumps or move to truly clean, low carbon biofuels is one that's definitely going to be explored, and that's one that we want to invest a lot of time in getting right, and we'll see how quickly it can move. There's going to be a discussion about really dramatically scaling up our weatherization efforts in Vermont. That obviously has a lot to do with the budget, but we could see standalone legislation on that as well. There will be an environmental justice bill. Actually, that one's already been introduced, S-148, over in the Senate. And that's something that the Climate Action Plan included as a recommendation. And there will be, a lot of other discrete actions on that sort of equity space outside of the, particular programs. One thing that we're looking at is making sure that across all of this climate action, we're really investing as a state in community outreach, translation, language access, the kinds of work that are easy to sort of forget about when you're saying, oh no, we need to fund incentives. But there are a lot of things that aren't actually just cutting the checks that are critical to making sure that everyone can take part in this and everyone knows what their options are in moving away from fossil fuels. So looking for funding there. I certainly could imagine some legislation being introduced around speeding up the transition to local renewable energy as well. And that is not, to be clear, a comprehensive list, but sort of some of the highlights. So this is going to be evolving. We're obviously all working in the coming weeks to better understand what the prospects are for legislation this session. Obviously, we will be in touch. I know this climate dispatch is going to be going on throughout the session, and I'm sure Lauren can fill you all in on what that's going to look like.
Great. Thank you all so much. Ton of great information, but clearly there's so much going on, and just very briefly echo the gratitude, all this work, and thanks to the counselors, and also thanks to all of you who were part of both getting the Global Warming Solutions Act enacted in the first place through a ton of activism, and have stayed engaged every step of the way. We gave a lot of info, but if you want to dig in more, we always like to end with a call to action or things you can do. Just next week, Wednesday, December 15th at 7 p.m., the Legislative Climate Solutions Caucus is going to be holding an event where they are going to be sharing kind of their perspectives, overview of the Climate Action Plan, and how they see that translating into action in the State House in the upcoming year. They're going to be doing regional breakouts, so you get a chance to connect with people from your region and lawmakers from your region. So I think it'll be a really great event. We'll put the link in the info we send out with this. So that'd be a great way to dig in more and make your voice heard as we go into the legislative session. We know that's what it takes to get all of these big actions that have been identified over the finish line. So thanks for keeping it up. And as Ben said, we'll be starting these climate dispatches up regularly again throughout the session. So lots of opportunity to stay updated and engaged on so many things. So we can leave it there, but thank you all so much. And I hope you have a great weekend.